Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear this okay. And thanks for joining us today. My name is Brad Hockmeyer. I know a whole bunch of you here. Some of you I don't. Let me give you a little background of what I'm doing on this stage. First of all, I'm a big fan of what Jonah Reynolds has put together along with a group of others. Well, let's see, a little background. I moved to Taos in 1979. And I was blown away by where I had moved to. Jonah's father, Mike Reynolds, was building these earth ships that was catching, their own water and making their own electricity. And there were all these empty beer cans we'd bring over to help them out with tires and all of that. In 1986, I bought Taos, and in 1991, we went solar powered up on top of Peakery's Peak. And we got a group of people to come up there. Mike Reynolds was the one who built it at the time. It was the highest elevation earthship that they had ever built. And I think Mike said he went through 4 or 5 sets of tires just going up and down. Anyways, it was quite an interesting crew that was on hand to help us build what housed our transmitter and our batteries to be the world's most powerful solar-powered radio station, something I know many Taos people have been proud of for the last 20 some odd years. That was in 91. Thank you. John Nichols' son, Luke, was on the crew. Jonah Reynolds was on that crew, and they were there every day pounding tires. And so my time with Jonah goes back a few years. In 97, we did the first Solar Music Festival. We were going to do it up in the Ski Valley, but I was told that there was an issue between the people in Hondo and the people at the Ski Valley. People in Hondo didn't want the Ski Valley doing summer events because they were concerned about the situation with the water, and there was going to be all kinds of protests. And I thought, oh boy, I'm right in between the Hatfields and the McCoys here. I don't want any part of this. And we ended up going out to the Earthship community, Greater World, and did the first Solar Music Festival out there with Michael Franti and Bodines. We had Otmar Liebert, Eliza Gilkison, good times. And then I guess it was in 2008, 2009, something like that, I was working on a program for the David Icke Network out of Britain. For those of you who know David Icke, you conspiracy theorists out there. And Jonah and I were working on putting a show together. That didn't go all that far because of the network, not Jonah and I. And then, well, now here we are today with Pangea putting together a project where Trev initially started. That got voted down or dissuaded from happening. But I'm really a big fan of Jonah Reynolds. I love the way he, guy's not a know-it-all. He's first to admit what he doesn't know, and he's got big ears. In other words, he listens to people, and that's what we're here for, to have conversation, some interaction. We want this to be something that we can be proud of as a community. And I think we have a good captain at the helm of the ship. I hope you'll please welcome Jonah Reynolds.
All right, thank you everybody for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you, Brad. Your work is tremendous here. I want to say thank you to Bent House Creative, Diggy Lloyd, Jason Seck, Eli Sabloski, Molly Costanza for putting on these events. They're an amazing marketing firm. I highly recommend them. I am grateful for you all to be here. Looking forward to your ideas, your comments, your criticisms to make this project the best that it can be. I'll be taking notes. My name's Jonah Reynolds. As Brad mentioned, we've been designing and building sustainable off-grid buildings for decades in Taos, in New Mexico, in the country, all over the world, disaster relief. I'm part of a larger team. I'm super grateful to be part of that team and lucky to be doing this. So we'll get started. I have some slides here. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible so we can have as much discussion and questions and answers as possible. So we are Pangea Biotecture. We are architects, builders, contractors, and we build single-family residences, communities, retrofit conventional buildings to make them sustainable and off-grid. In the middle of a pretty intense project in Los Alamos on that. And then we have an academy where we teach all of this stuff and go do disaster relief. We're getting ready to do a community center and schools in Guinea on the west coast of Africa. And that's our nonprofit that we raise money with. Student tuition is a complete write-off through that. So we have been looking at doing communities. We've done a few with my father, Reach up above Valdez, the Greater World Community on the other side of the bridge. We've always been asked, when are we going to do the next one? So we've been looking at properties over the decades, and as Brad mentioned, Trev happened and then didn't. And we were looking at a couple smaller pieces, 27 acres by the airport, a couple other things, to do this kind of a thing, a sustainable off-grid community. And then this kind of happened. So what we do is sustainable, off-grid, regenerative, and affordable. Those are very important key words that's threaded through everything we do. So today we want to present an idea and engage the community and get feedback and further refine this. Everything that you're going to see is not set in stone. The numbers, the amount of buildings, it's an idea. So the idea here is that a project like this, on this size, on this scale, that will affect pretty much everyone in the county and beyond, should not be rolled out as a final, this is how it is thing, more like a proposal. And Taos is brilliant. Taos is savvy. You can't get anything past the people of Taos. It's the solar capital of the world. It's the sustainable off-grid capital of the world, in my humble opinion. The brilliance of the designers and builders and plumbers and electricians and artists and teachers is just off the charts here. We are so lucky to be here and to have this community. I've always recognized that. It's very important that we all recognize that, the people in this room, the people in the community. So that's kind of the idea here through these public meetings and private meetings with families and others, is to kind of like, here's an idea. We're putting everything we have into this, everything we know, everything our team knows, and then some, to make this the best possible thing for everyone in Taos, all of our cultures. And so we want to present it to you and see what you think. See where we made mistakes, see where some good ideas are, see some things that we completely missed. And today, this is the third meeting, and we've had amazing feedback, amazing ideas, and I'm taking notes, and we're integrating those in, updating the website, and we'll further present to get to something that is final. But that being said, it will continue to evolve. We have to get something final for permits to build and all that, but this will be a continuously evolving thing. So the community, to jump right in. We are looking at roughly about 111 buildings total, just under a third of the previous plan. And the turquoise are affordable units. The tan circles are workforce, and the red is market value. The purple is commercial. We do circular lots because it's faster and more affordable to pull the surveys on those. It's a center point and a radius. And then all the land in between is all common green land that will be locked down through a nonprofit and never developed. All the green is micro farming, open air micro farming, and then we'll also be doing a lot of earthship walapinis, which is basically a sunken greenhouse so we can grow year round. We wrap that with the off-grid living systems, and we get massive volume, massive amounts of food that comes out of that. We are all living in an emergency room. Our infrastructure is questionable. There's food scarcity. Housing is a critical issue. So this entire thing is designed around affordable housing and food production for everybody. We'll be hoping to do about 1/3 of all the food production to donate around the county. And so this community, the design that you see is also the result of county and neighborhood association regulations and zoning. So we're hoping to avoid any variances whatsoever. So what you're seeing is the result of these things: affordable housing, food production, and the existing codes and zoning. This land was previously known as the Tarleton Ranch. It is 1.5 miles north of the old blinking light, and we are acquiring that property, about 330 acres. We want to develop and evolve this community that benefits everyone of Taos. So we've been designing and building sustainable off-grid regenerative buildings for decades. And as I mentioned, affordable housing and food security are the primary concerns. This is a community-driven, self-sufficient development that integrates all these off-grid living systems: catch water, passive solar, thermodynamics, on-site wastewater treatment. And the goal here is to, together we are strong. Only together can we make this project happen. So water supply. The average New Mexican uses 81 gallons of potable water a day. That's a lot. That is way too much. An average use in one of these buildings is around 25 gallons. Utah is up around 169 gallons. So the water use is, in our humble opinion, a little out of control. And so we flush the toilet with treated gray water, which I'll get into in a slide or two. It's basically treated wastewater through gray water planters. And so when we're flushing the toilet with treated gray water, to the human eye and the human nose, you can't tell the difference between that and potable water. That's just over 1/3 the amount of water that a typical home uses. So you cut that out, you have more efficiency, and that's how we get down to right around 25 gallons or so. So just to run through the process there, we catch the water off of a clean-ish surface, typically metal pro panel, so it catches good clean water. We push that into cisterns through silt catches. It's gravity fed then into what is called a water module over there on the right. The pumps like to have water gravity fed into it, so they don't have to work so hard, so they last much longer. And then that gives us code required pressure through the house via pressure tank. The blue filter on the right gives us potable water. These are cisterns on the left that are typically buried, and they gravity feed in. So wastewater. All of the wastewater is separated from the toilet water and typically the clothes washer and the dishwasher. That all goes into what we call gray water planters or botanical cells. They're basically a planter lined with EPDM, which is like a wetsuit material. It keeps everything contained, which does not pollute or leach into the aquifers. That's very important to protect. And so the idea is that all wastewater is treated on site. Each building takes care of itself. So we don't have infrastructure, which these days is questionable at best. So through these gray water planters, which is basically a river delta or the Florida Everglades just contained, right? We just capture it and let Mother Nature do its thing. So all that skin and hair and food chunks and soap and glycerin and all that stuff that goes down is ideal food for plants. So then we have crazy amounts of food that is produced out of this. Bananas and papayas are harvested here in February when it's a foot of snow outside. So the food production is a very interesting and beautiful thing. Just to make a point real quick, because we're not really environmentalists. We're doing this, it makes sense. It's logical. The beautiful result is that we do get to take care of the environment and do good deeds there. So then the gray water then flushes the toilet, and the toilet goes into a septic tank and an outside planter, and then typically there's a leach field after that. We usually only do the leach field just to get a permit rather than a special use thing or a variance or something to not need a leach field. Project we did in Florida, the water table is only about 1 foot or 2. So then I went to the health department, had 2 meetings and explained it, and then we didn't need a leach field because it's not appropriate there. And then typically there usually isn't much water left after the outside planter to go into the leach field. It's all treated, and there's all kinds of science and data around how many gallons each species of plant transpires and uses. The food production is amazing. So the idea here that I'm already working with the New Mexico State Health Department is to have, instead of 1 outside black water planter, we might do a larger one or 2 of them, maybe 3, and some larger carbon filters so that we end up with the equivalent of treated gray water to then put onto the land and microfarm and into the Wallapeenies so that we can completely avoid leach fields. That stuff should not be leaching into the ground. We need to protect the aquifers. Food production. A giant amount of food comes out of these systems. These are pictures of earthships that have been done all over the world by individuals, by owner builders, by students who have been through the Earthship Academy, the Pangea Academy, Earthship Biotexture. There's a lot of buildings that have been built over the decades all over the world. The food production is off the charts. So we want to really take advantage of that through the gray water planters in these buildings, through the Earthship Wallapeeni greenhouses, through micro farming outside. The idea is for all the food that this community will use to be produced within the community, and then some. The church in El Prado gets together meals and gives them away. We want to help with that. I really do think that we can solve food scarcity here, not to mention poverty and homelessness. So we're hoping to donate about 1/3 of all the food here to the larger Taos community. This is a cooperative model providing food security for all residents. There's, like I was saying earlier, brilliant people here in Taos, and we want to work with everyone. The food experts here that I've been talking to, we should be able to provide a lot of food for the community. So we're doing commercial zones here. And it's already zoned for it. And so we are, like I was saying earlier, putting everything we have into this. Our larger team that continues to grow. There are food experts, farmers, ranchers. And so we're looking at doing sustainable retail and artisan shops, like a 2-level thing like Santa Fe has, where it's like a gallery below and that artist lives on the 2nd level. There are only 2 buildings here right now that we have set to be 2 levels. The rest are all 1 level. Farm to table cafe, and then a restaurant. The live work units, a health and wellness center. And all of this is completely off grid, but the water part, as we've all noticed this winter, has been very, very dry. And we cannot predict what the future is going to bring. Hopefully it won't get too much drier, but it probably will. The point is that we don't know. We can't predict it. And then I can't predict how much water each person in these buildings is going to use. I can set boundaries. So we are probably going to have 1, maybe 2, hopefully not 3 wells on the property for that reason, because I need to make sure there's enough water, and we also have to protect the aquifers. So that's the only thing that will be, I guess you can say, not off grid. It won't be municipal water or city water. It'll be through those wells as a backup. We want to do a lot of research here and see how far we can push the boundaries on all of this. Biochar, worm farms, thunderstorm machines that will generate a lot of energy, biodiesel. There's a lot of amazing ideas out there, a lot of experts that we want to support. There'll be some offices, some commercial buildings, a community arts and cultural center. I think that we have some amazing diversity here, and the more we can learn from each other, the better. We want to preserve the view shed from all directions. This band here is the view shed from the east. We have the only two buildings, there are 2 levels. It's right here and right here. And a lot of you are probably familiar with earthships. A lot of them tend to be in the ground a little bit. Right now, these are maybe a foot in, and we can obviously lower those as we finalize the plans and the details. We want to make sure this is low impact and as small of a density as possible. So the residential zones, what we're looking at here for the affordable housing, where we're starting with affordable housing, is roughly a hotel size, about 350, 400 square feet at $500 a month with no utility bills. There are about, depending on who you ask, about 350 homeless people in the community. Some people say that's pushing to 500 or 600. That's not okay, period. We have to do something about that. That's one of the top priorities in this community, along with food. And so when you see these circles, the survey thing that I mentioned earlier, but we have a setback, and county regulations allow me to do 2 buildings with 10 doors each. That's why this is designed this way. Some buildings have a lot of doors, like the affordables. Some have a lot less doors, and we're balancing that out. You'll see here on the site map, like this one here, it's only affordables. A lot of feedback I've been getting is that we need to mix it up. The affordable housing's for general, the affordable housing for seniors, the workforce housing should be mixed up. So we'll probably do some workforce and affordable on the same circle, on the same 2 acres in this case. And so we're starting there with $500 a month. We have to support and take care of the most vulnerable first and go from there. And so the orange circle is the first outside blackwater planter. Then we have a second one, and then a third one that would result in treated gray water that is not just safe to put on the land, but highly beneficial so that we can grow as much food as possible. The workforce units, which is a little bigger, roughly around between 700 and 800 square foot. You can see a very similar building, but the units are a little bit bigger. And these buildings will be built with, probably not many will be built with rammed earthen tires. Most will be, or some more will be pumice-crete, which is pretty popular here. Some is even poured concrete. But what we're really getting into is 3D printing with concrete. And with concrete, not cement, which is with the aggregate, with the rocks in it. It's a lot stronger. But it allows us to do about 1,000 square feet in a week. Time is money. And the faster we can get these units up, the better, especially, hopefully, before the next freeze. It's very hard for the most vulnerable people in our community to deal with the winter. So workforce housing is a very popular and important thing with the state, with the county. Doing these units would allow the hospital to grow, UNM Taos to grow. So that's the idea here. And then this part on the left is parking. This is what it would look like typically on the inside on a greenhouse. That's an earthship type building in Montana. So the bigger picture, we have to be aware of the cultural and environmental impact. We have to be aware of the scale and density, the traffic and the infrastructure strain, the water supply, the wastewater treatment. We have to make sure that everything, or as much as possible, is regenerative, which means, for example, the water. right? We're going to supplement some water that we're going to take from the well, but we're catching about 80% of it. So we're through the gray water, we're putting more water in than we're taking out. We'll be building soil. So everything we want to enhance, we'll be following permaculture principles with the property to bring more water in. Unfortunately, we cannot stop Taos from growing. It is growing. We don't have a choice there. But we do have a choice about how it will grow, and we can get control of that. We can set an example for other developers and future developers that want to get in and say, not this particularly, but this type of a thing is what we will accept. We won't accept other things. It's very important that Taos as a community makes that kind of a stand and not gets taken advantage of by certain types of developments. This project can shape Taos's future, or at least be a part of it, and which is why it's very important to us that we all get involved and bring our ideas and talk about it and our criticisms. When people live off-grid, when people live in off-grid communities, the buildings take care of the people. What we've noticed with these buildings is that people become nicer to themselves. They become nicer to each other. We kind of mellow out when that stress struggle to survive, to pay those bills fades, and you're in a building that takes care of you. It's an amazing thing that was not designed. It just kind of happened. Just like I was saying earlier, we follow logic. We design these things consciously. It ends up being an environmental thing that helps take care of the land and the water and the people and everything. This is an amazing opportunity, an amazing chance, and we are going for it. And we welcome the community's involvement as much as possible. The ideas, the talking, the skills, the experiences. This is not going to be one person, one company. This is going to be all of us together to make this the best possible thing that it can be. So I encourage all of you to show up, bring your ideas. The website is taoscommunity.org, where we'll be keeping things updated and a lot more details here. This project is meant to serve the people. We want to make it the best possible thing for Taos. And with that, we'll open up to questions and ideas and discussions. Yes. Yeah, so what can I say about that? Well, yeah, that's right. Right. Where's the Pueblo at with this was the comment or the question. And so we started meeting with individuals, with groups, both on the Pueblo and off the Pueblo, I don't know, around last August or so. And government changes each year. So we've had discussions last year, which we're pretty much starting over with this year. But one of the comments I got was the rabbit hunt is very important. And the governor last year asked about that. And so over here, this red line that we see, we were asked to have a corridor there. And of course I said, absolutely. I also said that this is their land and their water, but here we are today, and we're doing our best that we can. I didn't know about the rabbit hunt before. That was my bad. I should have known. And so I learned that happens here, and it's a very important thing. And so we're making sure that we can support that in the best way we can.
I've always participated since I was able to. One thing for me that, like, walking in here, I don't see anybody from the public beside me. So what does that have to do? What does this project have to do with cultural preservation? Because I don't see anybody from my community here besides me. And if we were in support of this think we would have a lot more people from my community supporting this project. And so I have a background in advocating for indigenous rights and also just having Taos public blood running through my veins. So I want to say and explain myself without being hostile. I'm also a tour guide for Taos Public, so I educate people from all over the world on cultural preservation and how it's important to us. And so I always encourage people from outside of our community of Taos Public, my community. When I think of community, I think of Taos Public. And if you're not contributing to any of that, then I don't see how anybody has any business, whether business is pure Taos, period, because Taos Public is the foundation for what makes the rest of Taos what it is today. We are the first people, and I stand on that. And because it's in my blood, it's in my family. And so I always encourage people from outside to visit the Pueblo, to further educate themselves on the importance of what culture is and what that looks like. And so I want to ask you, Jonah, when was the last time that you visited Taos Pueblo for a feast day?
I was invited, I think, September, I think it was. No, we were working on the greenhouse we're doing there. At the Division of Natural Resources, yeah.
So when was the last time you actually taken a tour of Taos Pueblo?
Ooh, it's been a while.
Okay. So, but you've been to one of our feast days.
Long time ago.
Okay. So then you have an idea of what cultural preservation looks like in the community.
I'd say, yeah, I think I have an idea. I'm definitely not knowledgeable or an expert with that.
You should be.
Yeah.
You're gonna be a resident here. And I've done some research on you. I've known about your father, and I understand that you're trying to carry on his legacy. And so am I, being a community of Taos Pueblo. Because both sides of my family, they never intermarried, they never had any children with outsiders. And there's very few Taos Pueblo, full-blood Taos Pueblo people left. And actually, my grandfather, he was the only one that didn't sign that settlement to sell our waterways.
Right.
His name was Frank Marcus Sr., he's still alive. He's actually the eldest on our tribal council. He's 94 years old. So, I think you should be developing positive and close relationships with people from my community, like the tribal councilman.
Yes.
So one thing that as I mentioned, I've educated people from all over the world, all walks of life, doesn't matter the color or anything. When I share my culture, because I share my own experiences on our tours, they are, they don't want anything like this. They can't imagine anything like this for our people. Our community, our pueblo, is not a museum. It's our home. And I'm actually an owner of one of the homes that has been passed down to me from generation to generation in my family. So I'm the youngest, and the first grandchild in my immediate family to earn a home inside of my village. And I'm lucky because there's not many younger generations in the community that have their own home. And it's always been a dream of mine to earn a home, earn that respect of my family and my community. So, I know from a homeowner's perspective now what it means to, have a home, a sustainable home, living off the land, living off it, because that's how I grew up. I grew up gathering water from the river, hauling it to my grandparents' homes. We even dug our own well, heating it up on the wood stove, 50-50 hot and cold. That's how we walked growing up, And so I don't agree with your project. I don't, because my mother, she's also on the Chamber of Commerce. We have similar views. She represents herself, I represent myself. She does what she does with her work. I'm a little bit more radical when it comes down to things. I'm about abolish the system, period, because that's in my blood. And so, I've advocated for not only indigenous rights, but I've been allies with other movements across the nation with Black and brown solidarity. So again, I don't see any of that here. And I'm not a racist person, but not seeing the diversity in the community and mostly white people. I'm gonna say it like that because that's how I see it from my point of view as a tribal member. I don't recognize a lot of them. I don't recognize a lot of this. I'm sorry. You know, but we always say that it's not a right for anybody to step foot on our land to the privilege. And I feel like that needs to be, you know, that needs to be all over the place.
Yes.
You know? And so what I learned, and what I teach every day on my course, everyday people, what I'm speaking now, is what I learned from my own experiences growing up on Taos, what I learned from my family and the rest of my community. It's not what I learned in books. It's not what I learned online. Those are, you know, mainly white people's interpretation of our story. That's their side. But all the knowledge that I have is what's been passed down to me from generation to generation, and that's what needs to be valued in this community because that's cultural preservation. I don't see any of that in this project. I don't, especially the fact that, you know, you're gonna designate a certain area for our men to go on their rabbit hunt. That shouldn't even be questioned. That should not be questioned. That actually shouldn't even be there at all. Because to me, what I've learned about cultural preservation is leaving the land alone, leaving it untouched. So you see across the field, you see our land there, and it's just grass land, there's no development there. That's because we don't want it. We don't want that. You know, and I understand there's more people coming here, but what are you gonna hire locals? What who is gonna be working in these facilities?
How are you gonna make sure they respect the rabbit hut?
Yeah.
Yeah, just to answer that question real quick. Everyone who's showing any interest in here, I'm telling them that the rabbit hunt can happen 24/7 all year long and whenever, and they have to be okay with that. And if they're not going to get here. They're not going to live here. So
So the fact that we even have to ask permission to go through there.
oh, you don't?
Okay, so I don't understand why you want to disrupt that, though, disrupt the land with this development. Right here.
Well, yeah, I hear that. I definitely hear that. This opportunity to do the best community that we can here kind of fell into our lap. And as a person who lives here, I didn't want to see the alternative, which is it being developed by a different perspective of a developer, let's just say, and split up into 400 units on a whole bunch of buildings and wells and leach fields and all that.
The only perspective that matters is the people of Taos. That's the only perspective that should matter. And I actually watched your interview on KNCD, and I saw that you were talking about you were born and raised here. I know your father's from the East Coast. I did my research, okay? So you know, you're just a generation in. My family has been here since time immemorial. So it's important for us to have our space, to not have this at all, for it to be respected. Especially with like senior living. My best friend, she is the owner of Red Row Hospice. And she is the first locally owned business, and you probably heard of it. When I asked her,
Oh yeah, they're helping me out.
Anything to do with senior living, anything with that, and she had no idea. She had no idea this was going on. So, are you gonna like get community businesses like Red Row Hospice involved in your project?
Yeah, and back to the other question too was we're not going to allow any outside the county businesses to come in. We are hiring all local to work here and to help build.
So you're basically building a little mini Taos.
It can be, that's a certain point of view. You know, any community. Yeah, I mean, any community with residential and commercial is a mini little town or whatever like that. Sure, I see that.
I think, well, honestly, with all due respect, I think you need to brush up on your history more.
Yeah,
Because that's so important. And if you're talking about cultural preservation and respecting and honoring the traditions of Taos, you really need to do your research. You really need to get in touch with the community members, the elders at that, because they're the knowledge bearers.
there is.
They're the hearts of our community, and they need to be protected.
Yes,
And we need to learn as much as we can from them.
yes,
And
100%.
I'm not just saying, for my own people or, other people outside of our community, that really needs to be valued.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't know if you're disagreeing with me because you know that it makes sense and I'm a fellow member, just to appease me, but
Not at all.
I'm sick of walking in town and people looking at me like I'm poor. And I'm 30 years young, I have 2 children, and the house that I picture is how I grew up.
Mhm.
And seeing this here, across the way, there's already a bunch of houses on that side.
Mhm.
I can't picture any more there. Especially that pathway, around there is gonna be developed around there. Like, my ancestors have taken that path on the rabbit hunt. That is so precious to my people. And the fact that you wanna come to some sort of a compromise is bogus to me.
I wouldn't characterize it as a compromise. It was,
Well, we're trying to, compromise with our community members, like, oh, this is what we're gonna do as a way of like, as some sort of settler guilt. And I don't like that. I don't appreciate that. I don't, and you say you travel around the world, you work with many of these people in different cultures, you would think that you would know better. But I don't see any of that.
well,
Can I ask you a question? First of all, thank you, for being here, sharing everything you're saying. I think it's really important. And, for us to be educated. I'm just a little confused. Is it because of where this is at or any place in Taos we would feel this way? I'm just trying to understand. It's both. It's both. So any place in Taos, not just where.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's both, because I'm concerned about are the locals really gonna be taking precedence over all the other people that are coming in here? Because once they see this is gonna attract more attention. And I see that you're saying there's a cultural center. The cultural center is the public. That's the center of the culture here. And so that needs to, there needs to be more promotion of that, getting people to come to our community, because we have shop owners.
so the idea, yeah, the idea with the cultural center is for us to build it, but we don't run it. And it's for you to run it. That was the original idea. And when we first opened up about this community, when the Taos News article happened about a month ago, I had a lot more language, and the words I used in the posters and on the website was, how can we do things to partner up and do the things that you're saying and support all of our cultures, specifically the Taos Pueblo, right? That was the whole idea here with the cultural center, is so that it provides that education and that awareness, because there was a lot of things I didn't know that I learned last year. One of them was the rabbit hunt. And the reason why that's there, that's where the governor pointed to last year and told me about it. I learned that affordable housing is critical. I mean, I had an idea. Food scarcity was critical. I learned that through doing this Earthship Wallapini greenhouse over there at the Division of Natural Resources on the Pueblo. And we were working there and found that once a month, there's a line of cars that lines up where the Division of Natural Resources gives out food. And so the idea there with the greenhouse is that we need to grow as much as possible to make a dent in that. And what food do we grow is what we're being told to do. So learning about those things, putting together with the sustainable design and off-grid stuff is really central to the design here. And to not just do it here, but affordable housing everywhere in the community and supply food. So that raising awareness and education is very, very important. And the cultural center is the center of that. So last year in meeting with families and last year's government, I learned a lot and I want to keep doing that. I'd love to learn more from you and how we can best move forward on this and make it the best thing that it can be.
Well, thank you for saying that. I truly don't believe in the project at all. I really don't. I came here today because I wanted to let you know from a tribal member's perspective, from a young woman's perspective, who is, a member and a participant all the time.
Mhm.
All life, that's what I know, that's what I'm about. I lived in other places, so it's not like I'm ignorant to what's going on or how the world works. However, I really just wanted to share my point of view with others because I'm not speaking on Holocaust struggle, but honestly, I'm pretty much related to everybody else's struggle. So most, pretty much everybody in the community, besides the government and whatever deals they have with you, they don't agree with any of that. Because what we're taught is valuing the land and our resources, not regenerating it. Because in our way of thinking, that goes against our traditional cultural roots. That's who we are, that's our identity. So I can't be in support of this project, and that should be done.
Oh, it is. I understand.
You're gonna still try and go through with it anyway, so it doesn't even matter.
Can I ask you another question? If it does go through, what would be a step to, for dialogue, to bridge something where more of your needs and then, in this community, it's democracy. How do we bridge that? Do have any suggestions? Because if it goes through,
Visit the pueblo, go to the feast days, educate yourselves, take a tour, talk to our government officials. If you have money, invest in our community. Figure out how you can build a community and, creating programs that can help our children, our youth. Because one thing too is I saw like a wellness center or whatever, we need this, it's not just the pueblo. I see it all over. There's all these transits coming here, the prostitutes, the high, whatever. How is that going to help them? That's what we need to do. Is help the community that way because there's not, there's obviously not healthy ways of coping with this, right? So that's how I see, the community getting stronger is by, bridging that gap in that way of educating yourself. Because again, that's what makes the rest of the cause what it is today. Like, none of you would actually be here to start here. And the reason why people are so attracted to cost struggle is because we have so many resources that are scarce everywhere else. All these tribal, nomadic people, they came here to gather resources that they didn't have. So, which made it a hot spot. It's, to this day, is a hot spot. Because of the beauty, right? It's beautiful. You wake up every day and you're like, oh, my mountain. It's not your mountain, guys. Sorry, not sorry. My people are the ones who preserve that. Your guests here. And if you're doing guests here, then we need to respect the bottom because we need to be here. I've been here since time immemorial. So that's really why I came here and what I wanted to say. If you want to build more on this, I'm actually open to it. I don't have anything to do with that. I'm against that. However, I do have some cards. I have links to local businesses that I represented in New Mexico. there's a Taos News article that was written about a few years ago about the land bank movement, the community collective organization. And they were actually helping Leonard Peltier get out of prison, so they helped him get home. So I'm very close with that organization. So, you know, I advocate for indigenous rights, the land bank movement, and it's not, you know, for show or anything like that. It's in my blood. And so I'm just carrying the spirit of my ancestors on. I know that this wasn't the idea of what our people thought this was going to be. So, yeah. Just want to let everybody know.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Yes. Yeah.
I'd love to chat with them. I just have two. One, I care about Iowa. I don't want to have something that you do. That's the only thing I'm gonna say about that. I cringed when I saw the small area, but Jonah, like, he's not saying it enough. This is what's happening, and that's what he said. So, why can't we get nothing to this whole one? The other point to that, I will say.
Could you stand up and talk
Yeah,
more loud?
we
I can't hear you.
I get why they know you.
We can't hear
The
you.
one thing that I was sorry to not agree with, which is shocking.
Stand up.
No, I don't want to, I would go to my list. The one thing that I will say is, he's trying to put forward a plan on a piece of property that's gonna be developed in one way or another. And I would way rather see it developed like this than a bunch of condos that my ass can't afford to live in. You know what I mean? That's the one that I would love to be the one. Living in part of this and working with people that are actually trying, I mean, I grew up here, you know, I grew up with these guys doing this. And not everybody has the same point of view, so please share yours with people that want to keep Taos not full of, no offense to any of you from California, but rich ass California moving here. Yeah, I can't afford to live here. I can't. I grew up here. You know this. You know my kids. This is their home. This is your kids' home. This is a way better alternative in my opinion. What? More condos that they can build. That's just my thought. I would love to talk some more after. You know, over my burgers.
I don't agree. I'm good.
Yeah. Damn, I have to go. Well, I'll drink my burrito and buy you a cup.
I don't do caffeine.
Yes.
The recent bad examples of commercial developer coming in and just jumping over the night sky respect. What have you incorporated into this development that's going to set an example for others in terms of how important the night skies are?
Yeah, exactly. That is very important. So, which Taos County has a dark skies ordinance or whatever you want to call it. It could be stronger and go farther. So we're looking at a lot of the lights here that would be very low spectrum, so that, you know, if you're 200 yards away or something, you don't even see it until you're closer. So yeah, those types of things so that we don't have light pollution, right? And from every view shed, every direction, that we preserve it as best we can.
You have the opportunity to set an example counter to what we've been seeing. So think about incorporating that into your discussions because that's where we're talking to the whole community.
Yeah, we have the opportunity, not just us. Yeah. Yes.
My name's Judy Contu, and Jonah is one of the most respectful persons that I've ever met over the years. I know your grandparents, I know your whole entire family. I was married at South Pueblo, I was married for me. But I do love that South Pueblo, I've been there for the last 50 years. The the alternative was the Tarleton City. And we're all human beings on this planet together, whether we like it or not. And his project here is trying to help. It's not trying to hurt the public. In fact, our first meeting was with Taos several weeks back. And he's doing this, it's self-sustaining. It's really respectful to Taos Pueblo in its own way. I go to things every year. I help cook. I hang around there all the time. You don't know me down the place. And people are going to be coming over here. My dad used to be the mayor from 72 to 78. And he always told me, honey, the only thing maybe we can preserve is South Plaza. But people are going to be coming over here with their own ideas. And we do have to be protected, and I appreciate you. But the alternative is, this land goes, somebody's gonna develop it in a way that nobody's gonna like. This is quite helpful. It really is respectful. You gotta get to know Jonah. I really would advise you to speak with him several more times. But, anyway, I don't really know what direction I'm going. I just wanted to say that you need to speak with Jonah more. It's,
To help educate him and to help teach him what you want and what you.
and he really is trying to work with our fellow. He worked with friends, the governor last year, he's trying to work with him this year. And maybe you can be a part of that too. Anyway, that's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Judy. Yes. Yeah, you. Yeah. Either, yeah.
I totally respect this project, I'm excited for it, but I guess I just don't understand the whole picture. So is Pangea a company that owns all this, and then you guys are renting it out and being a property manager? How much of this is rental, and how much of this is we gonna sell? I'm not sure I understand the overall picture.
Sure.
And then you have market rate housing. My stomach turns when I see these earthships out of the greater world selling for $1 million now. So, I'm just wondering where this can go.
Right, I hear you. Pangea Biotecture is an architecture and construction company. We are purchasing the property, and the circular lots in their buildings will be sold. The affordable housing of $500 a month will be rented to start, trying to focus on the most vulnerable so they can get in. And then they make their own path from there. If they want to buy the unit they're in, great. Or if they want to, to use a word, graduate up into another building or a larger building, they can. That's the only portion that we're looking at renting. And then the term of what a lot of people call our earthships, we're pretty much moving away from that. These buildings, we like to call them sustainable off-grid or biotecture buildings. We just want to stay away from a certain brand. Most of these buildings will probably not be the typical earthship thing with an earth berm, right? We've experienced a lot of people who want these types of buildings to be independent and off-grid, but to look different. Some do want them to look like an earthship, like over there on the right, which is just an example of something that could be a workforce housing unit. So the idea is to allow people to buy these, and we want to be inclusive with everybody. The people who are most vulnerable in our community, who need that price point, and everyone in between, all the way up to the other end of the spectrum. That's very important to us that we support everyone along there. Yes.
You sort of just answered one. Only the smallest units will be rentals, the senior housing and the affordable housing
The senior affordable housing and the smaller affordable housing, there's a distinction there. Those will start out as being rented, but
And what rent you said rent approximately for the smallest ones. What do you expect for the senior housing?
well, it's pretty much based on size. So we started out with around 350 to 400 square feet at 500. Yeah, at 500 a month rent with no utility bills because it's all off grid. But what we found is that we were thinking about one or two people there. And so through some feedback through these public meetings, well, what about a family, that is also on that level of needing as affordable as possible. So we would grow it instead of 350, it'd be something like 600 or 700 square feet. Just
What would a senior person expect to pay for rent?
they start at 500 a month.
And, okay, and then go up to what?
Depends on the size. It can go up to,
But I mean, seriously,
yeah.
500 to what? 5 million, 500 to 2,000, 500 to 1,500, 500 to what?
Probably around 1,200. I mean, it depends on the size of the building to set that rate.
And my second question is, why do you need two hotels?
Yeah. So
Why do you need any hotels?
so we're looking at two. One is probably decently described as that word, hotel. The first one, we want to keep that as subtle, calling it more like a Taos casita type thing. All off grid, all sustainable, but and this kind of gets into the nightly rentals that are out at the Earthship community, is when we have buildings like this where people can get into them and experience them on a very cold day, and you get inside and they're warm and growing the food and treating all the wastewater. That's a completely different thing than seeing pictures or a website or reading some text about it. And that raises this awareness of that, and this has been for decades, that we can do sustainable off-grid buildings with modern amenities. And that is a wonderful way for people to realize and experience that it's not just possible, but it can really support and allow a community to thrive. So that's the idea there with,
That's more like the BSing me a little bit there. The idea is to make money, obviously. So that's fine, but be honest about it, please. How much would a room cost?
it depends.
How big would the hotel be?
Well, the first one is going to be the same exact thing as the affordable housing buildings. 20. So it's the same building, the same size thing. And the goal here is not, the top goal is not to make money. Money is like a hammer or a tool. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad. But it's a necessary tool in here, and it has to be used. And so we're using it to the best of our ability to not just make this happen, but to support the rest of the community. Part of the inside of this plan is around 4% off the top of everything except the affordables to go toward affordable housing and food production for the greater Taos community. Yes.
First of all, the first meeting, you said that some of this money would be taken and used to build homes for people on the pueblo. First of all, would you be charging them rent on their own land? And then, so they get free housing?
That's, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And the food.
And food? Okay. Second question, you said you wanted to cater to all spectrums of wealth. How are you gonna ensure that it's actually locals that are poverty stricken that get access to these homes and not rich people?
Every resident that wants to get in here will have a background check. It gathers info about them, and there should be an interview process so that we can make sure that
People already have issues gaining access. So you're to have homes?
With the background check? Right. Well, the background check is a necessary step, but our focus on this entire thing is no, definitely not. Our whole focus here is affordable housing and food production.
How are you going to ensure that poverty-stricken people of Taos get these homes for poverty people?
We will understand their, yeah, we want to understand where they're coming from, who they are, so we can make sure that happens. You know, we're not just going to take an application and people sign up and they get in, right? We want to make sure, to your point, that the most vulnerable get in to the affordable housing units. Yes.
You may have addressed this, my hearing's kind of bad, and it's kind of up there with the mic. Where are you at with the zoning on this, currently, and is there, have you, done any design work that really has more to do with engineering than architecture at this point? It's a fairly complicated piece of engineering in the ground. I heard you had mentioned something, I see a lot of, where this is kind of, to me, I've done an awful lot of development in my life. This is either a mixed use or a lot of special use exemptions that are going to be here for seniors, but for commercial space, for
Multifamily.
with multi-use. So is there a plan? Have you already, or is that in the works with the planning commission?
Yes, we've met with the county a number of times to identify a pathway to permits, which is through what is called summary subdivisions, which allow for 5 lots per summary subdivisions. So there'll be a number of these summary subdivisions. And when we do a sustainable off-grid community, very similar to the Earthship community out there, there's no infrastructure. You know, here we're doing a well or two as a backup, so there'll be a little bit of that. But all of that development money and time and all that doesn't need to happen because each building takes care of itself. So, and then the multifamily homes, the commercial buildings, those are all, yeah, special use permits, and there's a process for that. Yes.
Do you have the water rights yet?
That's in process. Yes.
When do you envision possibly someone moving in here, and when do you envision it being a full community?
That's a tough question. I mean, we have an idea of how we want to build and when in year 1, 2, and 3 and all, but also clients are coming in kind of faster than we expected. So that would affect the timeline on, you know, if it's 15 years or 10 when it's all said and done. And, you know, things always take a lot longer than we would like them to, especially with me. I'd love to get going yesterday. But we're looking at starting some buildings, probably June, July, somewhere in there, depending. Excuse me? Oh, yeah. Yeah, residential and some commercial. Yes. Well, we're not going to allow any short-term rentals here. No, you know, corporations or anything outside of the county in the commercial part, but people who get in and they might want to sell their house. We can't stop them from doing that, but that's where some of that background check is so that we can understand who they are. The HOA will be very strict, you know, to not just support the idea of sustainability and affordability and all the ideas here, but to protect this, to protect. It's a group in a community that sets rules about how everyone lives together, and it can even get into the way buildings look and where we compost and all those things. Homeowners Association, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
hard to understand what the turquoise circle is, and what the purple circle is, and what the little orange thingies are. So if it can't stop, I think it would be really helpful for those of us who are trying to follow what's going on.
Yeah.
To understand what's happening. And then just more generally here today, can you just tell us, can you show us, like using a pointer, where, like, what geographic areas we're actually talking about? I know that's Valencia, I know that's 150, like what's the bottom part of it? Where's Charlton's house and that
Yeah,
property?
Valencia is here, the Tarleton Ranch is here. This is Gavilon Road. This is Highway 150, so Medley and Taos is down here. The Y up above to go, that splits off to Salem.
And then does Gavilon go all the way to Valencia?
Gavilon's here. And then this new road here in the middle will connect through.
To Valencia,
Yeah, over to Valencia,
where that blue line is?
the turquoise line there. And so we're, looking at bike paths and trails and all that in there. There'll be a roundabout that I'm understanding from the Department of Transportation, somewhere along here, wherever they designate. And then the site map on the website, it's a high-res thing. But we'll add a link on there just so it can be downloaded as an actual PDF, which is usually better. But that being said, some of these circles and buildings and things are moving and adjusting based on this. So that file will change accordingly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so these two purple circles up here on the left, the idea there is that these are schools, very young and like middle school age. So that, and I'm obviously not a teacher or an expert, but there are teachers who are coming in and who are interested along the lines, the opposite of these, with all due respect, conventional factory type schools that don't really teach our kids much. So something along the lines of country day school, Waldorf, along those lines. And I'm not an expert there, so that's where these expert teachers. I don't know yet. If they are private, it would be very minimal, but I'm not that expert to determine that or what is best. And then, daycare programs, that type of thing, that comes into the food production. So the hope there is that we have young people growing food in the gardens and the Wallapinis with older people. And that's where a lot of the stories and wisdom and knowledge and everything is shared, when those two age groups hang out together, and then we get to grow food. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. One relates to your treatment, Blackwater, for these facilities.
Yes.
So there's going to be solid waste coming through the sewage lines. How is that treated? Because that can't go into a bioplant. So where will that go?
So each building takes care of its own wastewater. So there's no wastewater grid or central septic system for the whole community. And so the idea there is that the toilet, the dishwasher, and sometimes the clothes washer goes out into outside blackwater planters, or botanical cells is what they're called. And that's a
Problem there is you've got solid waste. How does that get incorporated into this plan?
the solid,
Yeah, the solid.
not,
I'm talking about the feces.
oh, yeah, yeah.
How
Well,
does that get incorporated in the plan?
it goes into a septic tank first, and that's where it's all broken down and the solids, and then that overflows.
That answers the question.
Yeah, into the botanical cell, then a couple botanical cells, because we want to get that to treated gray water. So it's good to put on the land, not just okay, but good.
And in your experience, the pathogenic organisms that are associated with the waste, those are eliminated by the time the wastewater gets to the plant?
So, yeah, we've always had, to get the permits, we've always been required to do a leach field after that botanical cell. And that's the typical system that we do. Now, what we're hoping to do here is not need a leach field because we don't want to put anything into the ground. So that's where I'm working with the state right now so that we can have live tests of that water at the end of not just one, probably 3 black water planters, and see exactly what that is. From doing this for decades, I have a pretty good idea that we can, but we have to test that and, to your point, make sure.
The other question is about energy in these houses. So you show passive solar, which is great. What other energy systems are operative here? Photovoltaic, solar?
Solar.
Yeah,
The-
photovoltaic, solar.
Yeah, the creek runs, I think, all year. There's the idea of micro hydro, but it's not going to make that much compared to the solar power systems. There's plenty of power there.
So would you use, for instance, resistance electric heating or?
Probably not. We don't need to. There's plenty in solar.
No, I mean, how do you actually heat the place?
Oh, that's through the sun, and the heat that comes from the sun gets absorbed into the thermal mass of the building, and then,
That's going to be that on a 0 degree day?
oh yeah, or 20 below. We've done buildings all over this planet in very extreme climates. The coldest was probably 100-mile house, 100 miles from the Arctic Circle, typical earthship, tires and all that. And it stays pretty much 69 degrees, 3 feet off the ground, no matter what's going on outside. And that's just the sun and the thermal mass, which is like a temperature battery. So at night, when the air in the room drops, that heat trickles out of the room. And then an added kind of insurance on top of that would be solar radiant in the floors. So, yeah. So the sun heats the water, but if the water can't get up enough from a cold winter week or weeks, then the solar electric water heater, the Rheem hybrid heat pump, kicks in and bumps it from, say, 60 to 70 or whatever is needed. Probably, yeah, because we want the buildings to be able to be oriented in any direction, not just south. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to read a statement that I wrote earlier, reiterating that you had said that you will go forward with this development regardless of the Pueblo's blessing or desire for it. We need real solutions for Taos. Affordable housing is a crisis. Off-grid living is being criminalized instead of recognized as a legitimate and necessary way of life. But this project, the one being proposed right across from Taos Pueblo, is not the answer. What being presented as a sustainable, culturally reverent development is, in reality, settler colonial expansion and green branding. If this were about heritage and preservation, it would start with the people whose heritage is at stake. Instead, the Pueblo is being placed in a familiar position, a false choice wrapped in diplomacy, with a so-called water deal that ensures either way that water will be taken. This is how settler colonialism operates, not through outright removal, but through manufactured agreements where the terms have already been decided. We have also heard inconsistent claims about what this development actually is.
The housing is being marketed as inspired by traditional Pueblo design, yet the reality is 3D printed construction, an approach that has nothing to do with the land-based knowledge that has sustained this place for centuries. If the goal is to integrate into the cultural fabric of Taos, why replicate indigenous aesthetics without honoring indigenous governance? Let's be clear, cultural preservation without indigenous leadership is not preservation, it is appropriation. We need housing, but not at the cost of repeating history. We need sustainable models, but not ones that use green narratives to push through large-scale development that permanently alters the land, water, and community structure of that. If Pangea project wants to be part of a real solution, it must start by listening, not just to feedback, but to the people who hold the right to say no. A true partnership cannot be extracted from pressure, persuasion, or predetermined plan. It must be built on sovereignty, consent, genuine accountability. Anything less is not sustainability, it's just the next iteration of settlers. A friend and I wrote it.
Yes.
I have a question about the size of the low-income housing rooms. Are those rooms about the same size as like the hotel rooms? Or will they be a little bit bigger?
They're about 350 to 400 square feet.
And it's like, what would that equate? Is that like a standard hotel room or like 2 hotel rooms?
It's a typical hotel room, a smaller one.
If we have 3D printing availability, is there a way that you could drop those housing down lower and actually put an upstairs so that we're not just renting out a postage stamp and feeling like we're living in a hotel? And will we be right next to our neighbors like we are essentially living in a hotel?
So the idea there is to build these buildings as low cost as possible so that we can get that $500 a month, so that it is affordable. Yes, the 3D printer does allow for 2 or even 3 levels. We're not doing anything above 2 here. And yeah.
Would it be possible to even put that plan in the future as this is a successful endeavor, that we can even upgrade what our bare minimum is that we're offering for people in the future by potentially dropping them down to some level and adding it upstairs and doubling space in the future as it's successful?
So adding a lower level later.
Or a higher level later, because it works better to build up.
Yeah. A second level, yeah.
And then with HOA fees, will they be an HOA fee to be able to maintain that? We don't see happening yet, but will probably be in the future, because every HOA I know
Has a fee, yeah.
Are there common areas that like are a group kitchen or barbecue, or what actually creates a sense of community or expanded beyond a hotel room?
Yes, so in the middle of each of these circles is a common area, and then within the community, there's common areas. I'm not sure about a common community kitchen. I have gotten that idea and comment a couple times, and that's something we'll look at. And then, I'm sorry, the other part of your question?
I guess I was asking you a question too. If somebody buys a building, how will you guarantee that the maintenance and quality will be able to continue on to the standards that it needs to be able to sustain?
Right, so that's part of some services that we're going to offer, everything from maintaining the gray water planter and the food production in the home, so that we'll grow the food for them and vegetables end up in a box on the counter, as well as into the maintenance of things. Some people want to do it, some people don't. And I remembered the point about the HOA fee is, so we're looking at having an option there of, instead of a fee, you can get into the greenhouse or some of the micro farming and help grow some food instead of actually paying a fee. Yes.
How many jobs do you estimate this will actually create? And are you hoping that most of those jobs will get covered by volunteer hours by the people that live there?
I'm not anticipating a lot of volunteer that needs to be covered. I would imagine that would be something that a lot of people would want to do, but we're not going to really rely on that. The amount of jobs, it's going to be a lot, from construction to growing food to teaching to more. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening here. Yes. Only inside the county. Maybe into Espanola. We're doing a project in Los Alamos, and we've experienced some really good builders. But we want to keep everything here in the county. Yes.
Hello, I'm Sterling. I'm actually Jonah's partner in Pangea in general. I was not planning on speaking today. But I'm from Oklahoma. I came here to listen to all of you and hear what you have to say about everything going on. I'm a scientist by trade, and I study quality of life research and how to improve quality of life with people. I can tell you that if we don't do this with this land, the alternative is not good. It will be parcel off and sold. So from the very beginning, Jonah and I have talked about how to work with the Pueblos, how to have discussions with them, how to understand their needs, and that's very interesting to me from a scientific perspective as well. How do you improve quality of life in an area among people and the Pueblos, the people who were here from the beginning? So how do you make the services on the community accessible to the Pueblos? The health services, the schools, everything. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you I have all the answers. I don't. Jonah, I can tell you, Jonah takes everything you say very seriously. And we have a database of every single comment that anyone's ever written. So anyone always welcome to come and talk to me and introduce themselves. I'm happy to talk to people and learn. We have talks with the Pueblo going on. I am here to learn from all of you, but I can say I got into quality of research because of my own children. I have a special needs child, I have another child who needs something, and so how can we actually improve a community across the board? And that's something that I'm interested in learning from you, from Taos, because Taos is different than where I live. And how you do a community where I live is different than how you do a community here. So I just wanted to introduce myself because one comment that happened is that with the previous project, the people behind the picture were mysterious today. But I'm right here. So feel free to come talk to me, ask me any questions, tell me anything you want.
So you're an investor?
No, I was an investor in Jonah's original company. Yeah.
Are
So I-
any investors here today?
Yes.
Yeah, so since I'm an original investor in the company, I could invest in this, or I could help it grow through other investors. But anyone would have to go through us, would have to go through Jonah and I, and that's why I have my financial analyst here from New York to make sure that everything you guys say is accurate. See, this is the problem. If you're 3D printing things, how do you ensure the cost is affordable? If you have a second story, what does that do to rent? If you add services, what does that do? I got introduced to Jonah because I live on it. And I got tired of air conditioners in the heat. And I got tired of things. So my wife and 2 sons came here and stayed in the earth. And I thought, this is amazing. Why aren't we building more houses like this? This is ridiculous. So I invested in Jonah's
company and basically started partnering with him, said, let's do this the right way through scientific research, and how can we do this to help improve quality of life? So that's why you have part of the hotels, is because you have these 20 rooms to introduce people to this, because it's such a foreign concept that when you go there and you actually stay, you're like, oh, this actually works. Like last night, I stayed in the ocean. And it snowed, and there was no problems with the heat. We had water, we had hot showers. That's a really weird concept for people. And so you have to have a place where people can see it and see the concept. But I'm hoping that this can be not just like a development, not just a development, but a base model for a concept on how a community should be run. Right, so you have part of the, you do have to have a ratio with this. What happens if one person gets violent with their neighbor? What happens if there's a person who's a registered pedophile and they move in next door to a child? So there's so many things that you have to take into account of this. But we want the ideas, we want the feedback. That just helps us grow and expand the model. It helps us improve it for everyone.
Do you, can the investors like stand up and introduce themselves, maybe say where they're from? Tell us a little bit about themselves.
I'll tell you right now.
Investing.
So,
I'm wondering if the other investors.
so this is my father, Stephen Sneak. This is my brother-in-law, Aaron Stallings. And we all live on the same ranch, and we are the ones compiling all the investors together in order to actually make this happen. This is my financial analyst from New York, Joseph. Yeah, and so we believe in Joe's vision. We agree with him. He's the most respectful person I've ever seen. And we want to know what works, what doesn't work. But let me tell you, I've heard word of mouth what happens if we don't do this. And it's not good.
That's what all of them do, all of this area.
Yeah, but it's not our land right now. It's our zone. So guess what happens if we don't buy it?
Oh, you understand that you already own the land.
It's in the process of being purchased.
How much?
I'm not sharing that info.
No, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. There's so many things going on with it. If we don't get this chance, like, this is the best chance for, we believe, Jonah and I believe in the vision for this community, and we're just here to support it.
Yes.
I definitely want to say thank you for all of your efforts, and I really appreciate this being thought out. And I also dream of being able to create replicable models that show how communities can be done in a different way. There's already like global buzz that we are facing famine by 2030, and we know that there are resources available in abundance if we properly steward this earth. So I just want to say thank you for putting thought into that. But my science question is, are you guys going to have a testing facility on site to be able to keep track of all of your wastewater and all of that? Because that even existing in Taos would be a huge benefit. But I know from doing water research, you have to go to Albuquerque or somewhere else, and it costs a lot of money for each individual test and for there to list in units. Is there a building that's designed for that?
Well, we want to test and put sensors on everything, temperature, water, power, everything, and understand that, aggregate it, and learn from it. So yes, in the back.
Thanks, Jonah. Jerry Fernandez here from Taos Land Trust. Thank you for presenting this to the community. We reached out to the previous group that was trying to develop, never got a call back. We'd love to sit down with you and talk about how the land trust can ensure that open space is preserved in perpetuity, including cultural access for residents of Taos Pueblo and regenerative supportive agriculture that happens. So putting that out there, hopefully we can sit down and talk about how we can work to preserve some open space.
Yeah, that would be great. I think we traded a few messages. Yeah. Yes.
So I keep hearing that the hotel is an opportunity for the public to come see an example, but for us locals who are interested, I have been trying to find a solution for housing for some years, sustainable. Will you stage how this happens and have some models so that I can come see, so I can build trust and structure is like?
Yeah, so the buildings that are existing now are the Earthships at the Greater World, and they're a decent example, right? Even though we're not planning on doing Earthships per se or that specific aesthetic. But yeah.
But having a model, because I'm interested as much in the sustainable building part as I am in the community aspect. And so one consideration is, I know these are cement, they're not earth. I would, I relate to earth as a Taos natural person. So I'm wanting to get a sense, what is the cement building? Will you consider insulation between units? Because people live with very different schedules and you're talking collective living. That's important to me. Earthships, in my experience, are a little musty. I don't know if that's healthy, so I have questions and want to learn about that. We talk about HOA and guidelines. HOA stands for Homeowner Association. Is that strictly homeowners who have input on that? How are guidelines created? I really like that you're open to renting before purchase so that that trust can be built, especially because I would come in an infill level that it probably would need to be in a shared space. I want to say, given that, I know you want to serve the vulnerable populations. I feel your heart in that as somebody who you're talking about mixing and integrating. I have concerns because a lot of homelessness has systemic issues to it. And I am a working person who's worked hard my whole life. I need to understand that I would feel safe, that people know how to take care of themselves and take care of each other if I was going to coexist. I think that covers my questions.
Yeah. I'll run down them. The materials. We're going to be building with pretty much everything except stick frame and straw bale. I'm just not personally a fan of straw bale because it burns, it rots, and attracts critters. But rammed earth, concrete, even though that is a bad material, it allows the building to perform. So 20% of the energy that goes into a home is during construction, 15 to 25. And then about 80 is during the life of the home. So that's where it can, I guess, quote unquote, make up for the bad things about concrete. Adobes for sure, and then rammed earth. And then insulation, all of our bat insulation we get through a company called Hempatecture out of Utah. And it's all from hemp, which has the highest R value. We're working with them to increase their production and to get to rigid insulation. So instead of the 4-inch rigid polyiso that we have to use now, so that we can get to an R50 in the roof. And then keeping sound from going from unit to unit. That's where the rammed earth and tires is really good because it's a 2.5 foot thick wall. Nothing gets through that, barely even a cell phone signal. So the idea of doing a 10-inch thick 3D printed concrete wall just about achieves that. And then their surfaces, they're soundproof to do that as well. Oh yeah, every unit will have a good thick wall between them for sure. But they are close. So you go out the door and you're right next to your neighbor. The HOA, that covers all residents, whether they're owning or renting, right? And then the ventilation. So we have cooling tubes and operable skylights. When that's done right, it works great. And we've done it in cold humid like Scotland, and of course hot humid like Costa Rica and India, and it works great. But there are buildings that were built before cooling tubes, or other people have built them and they look like an earthship. So that pretty much comes back to, the earthship biotecture company with that. But we have heard that before. And then the demonstration buildings. Yes, we are going to be doing some what is called spec buildings, build it first and then people can walk through it and either get that or experience it. And that gets to the hotel, those type of buildings that people can experience it. So there will be demonstration buildings as well as a visitor center. And then, yeah, the affordables, I understand that judgment or that stereotype or that stigma with people of low income trying to get into affordables. I do not like that. And I've received comments about that. Just because someone wants to or needs an affordable building does not mean they should be judged in a certain way. So we all have to be very careful with that. But I understand that perspective, and it's valid. It's very important that all voices are heard on both sides of things, and that's where the most learning happens, in my opinion, as well. And that's where that kind of background check comes in, just to understand the story and the background of that person so that we can.
Where people are being given the support for work, for mental health, for support groups. Putting a roof over somebody's head is not just the solution.
Right.
And it takes deep compassion and education to get that people are needing help in various ways. So I don't, a background check is not going to achieve that unless you have some criteria that people are working. So I'm just wanting to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not the only thing, right? So we're looking at the whole social dynamic of this community and supporting that in the best way possible for everyone, right? And a lot of us know, and the food experts know best, where when we get into the gardens and grow food and get that good bacteria, like on our fingers and hands, it affects us emotionally and socially. And it's very helpful for our mental health. So there's a lot of those programs I'm not an expert in, but we have a lot of people that are coming into this and on our team that are looking at that on these programs and activities within the community to support all the people in it, specifically our most vulnerable that are coming in. Because the amount of trauma and stress and anxiety from people who do not have a place to live every night and they don't know where they're going, that is intense. And it takes a long time for that to kind of shed off, if ever. So yes, you're absolutely right. It's more than just a roof and a decent price point. It's so much more than that. Yes.
I got two questions. The first one is, how long does a person have to be a resident of Taos to be considered to be able to rent or to get commercial space or be involved in the project? First question, then I'll ask second.
That's a good question. I don't have an answer to that. How do we define what affordable housing is? How do we define how long you can live in a place before you're deemed a local, right? That's a good question. So we don't want to allow outside the county businesses to come in, but people who want to live here, that's an interesting point, you know? Well, with the affordable housing units, we want to be very intentional and very careful that we allow the people who come in who are the most vulnerable and need it, right? So that I think at the first meeting, the first public meeting, we had a question and a comment about what if someone who does have some decent amount of money, or however you want to define that, but wants one of those 400 square foot-ish units. On the one hand, I can see who are we to judge and say no, but also on the other hand, I can see where we can say no, right? So we have to be very careful that we support the most vulnerable. Second.
To piggyback on that, are you gonna be doing like KYC on people as well as background check to know what their financials are? So somebody that's like, how are you gonna know whether they're worth $10 million in one quarter's worth of space, or whether they're homeless and want to get space? What do you have to do?
We have to do our best to interview and understand their story and make the best call that we can.
Okay, second question. At the last meeting, we talked about terraforming and finding the best way to recycle and generate the water system, those stuff. You said, I don't remember if you identified a particular company, but you said you have people that are going to test the soil and those stuff. Do you have a particular company in mind, or a group of people that are coming in to do this permaculture, testing the soil, testing the waste, renewable water with water and terraforming land?
We'll be doing that for the most part with people on our team and in our company, but at the same time, we want to partner with universities and schools who are just as capable, if not more, to do that. And that brings into the education piece, right, with students. Yes?
What kind of response have you received from county and Taos Housing Partnership?
Well, we've been meeting with the county to identify that path of permits for 5 months or so now, something like that. And understanding all of the county and neighborhood regulations and codes and zones so we can fit into that without having to ask for any variances. So, you know, they have to be careful not to give an opinion because they're providing permits and all that. But along those lines, that being said, along those lines, the biggest feedback I'm getting is that our focus on affordable housing is absolutely critical. So that's why we're leading with that and designing everything else to support that in food production. Not much communication or anything there. They've reached out on telling us that they're. Taos Housing Partnership? No, they haven't shared any of that. They've informed us of other properties in the area that they would like us to do affordable housing on, and we're looking at that, but focused on this first. But there is a lot of state and federal money for affordable housing and workforce housing that we'll be looking at as well. Yes. Generational, people who have been here longer? I mean, personally, yeah, I would love to, but what is that kind of like the other question about what does that mean to the people who have been here for, say, that would be up to people that are much smarter than me with that and has a much better awareness, and probably a group, not one person. But we got to be careful for both perspectives and both people there. I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough to answer that right now. I'd say that's people who are smarter in a group to really. Oh, no, that'll be very soon. And I'm just part of a team. And so when we get that going, we gotta make sure we do that right. Just like the point about affordable housing and who gets it when. I don't know yet, but people from here for sure. We would like to start that in July. Yes. There's a lot of work to do. Yes. Well, I started hoping to do about 108 individual affordable units. That's probably going to be closer to 70. Yes.
How are you possibly going to be catching 80% of the water you're using, when that equivalent is like 500,000 gallons over a 6 month period where it doesn't rain? It seems like you're going to be constantly filling the tanks, like they do in the greater world, and constantly using propane for existing heat. And to say it's no utilities is like not even in scope of what is reality. Because electricity, when you have 80 people in one house, you're not going to be able to support that solar because the batteries are the cost.
Well, these buildings don't have any air conditioning or electric heat elements, so that lowers the power needs drastically. And we're not doing any propane or natural gas. Everything is electric. That's the idea, yes. So we sized the power systems based on load evaluation sheets with everything that uses power, and the solar power systems are sized for that. So the smaller buildings use less power, but they still use a decent amount. And so the solar power systems provide plenty of power. We've been doing it for decades. A lot of people have been doing it for decades. The water supply, when we flush the toilets with treated gray water, that's roughly a third that is that much less that we have to supply. So say here in Taos is, depending on where you are, let's just call it 8 inches of rain a year. That basically triples when we don't need fresh water for the toilet. So there is a lot of water. We have to be very careful. And that's why I was saying earlier that we're looking at doing a well or two as that backup.
But the well, according to the subdivision law, you cannot just have one well for these amount of houses. It's only 6 houses per well. So according to your math, that's 19 wells, according to the regulation now it's written. Also, your roadway, you stated in the past you want gravel road. That, according to the subdivision law, says that every single one of these has to be paved in 24-foot wide. And you have it written, yes, sir. Look up the regulations, it's appendix C. It's in there. Don't believe what he's saying. Read the regulations. You're putting black water, you're saying there's not going to be a contamination of the aquifer. That's hard to believe because that's 111 septic systems that you're dumping black water on. You're saying the botanical cells are going to deal with it? That's great in a perfect world. This is not dealing with the problem. This is adding more of the problem to this area. You're sucking water out of the aquifer and you're dumping black water back. That's all it is.
Not exactly. So the black water planters will run through the system. It goes into a septic tank, breaks the solids down, and then goes into what we call the black water planters or botanical cells, which are lined with EPDM like a wetsuit material, and further breaks it down so that typically at the end of that, there isn't much left over that gets into the leach field. But that doesn't happen. I mean, we've been doing let's back up a little bit. In a place like Costa Rica, where it gets 12 feet of rain a year, yes, we would cover it. but we've been doing that here for decades, and the system doesn't get flushed out like that, right? It's about 4 feet wide, and depending on how much flow is coming in, 30 or 40 feet long, sometimes 20. But after that Blackwater planter, then it's a leach field, right? So what we're doing here, and I'm working with the state health department, is to do either a longer Blackwater planter or 2 or 3 with larger carbon filters, so that there's way more treatment, so that we can hopefully end up with treated gray water, so that what we are looking at putting onto the land would be the equivalent of treated gray water. And that's where a lot of that testing and live testing comes in. So that's the wastewater. The roads, we've been meeting with the county on what the requirements are based on traffic study, based on density, and nothing is going to be required to be paved, not even Valencia on the side. They will have to be engineered and a certain width based on where the roads are and how many units it serves, and a roundabout thing for the larger fire trucks to get in, right? Now, with the fire departments, when we have cisterns all over the place, they like that. It helps with some of the requirements, and we went through that with the Earthship community out there. The catchwater systems, we sized these systems to get through a 100-day drought where there's no rain at all. So the size of the roof is designed to be a certain size, the amount of cisterns we have. And in Taos, the rains that we get can be big a lot of the times. So we don't want any overflow. So then we'll have more cisterns so that we catch it all and it doesn't overflow and go away, so that we can get through a 100-day drought, or possibly more as the climate changes and gets a little weird. And then the meeting with the county and the summary subdivisions, that's how we're able to not have a well or 20 on here. And that's just not an option. So the summary subdivisions help that.
The summary subdivision only allow for 6 houses per lot.
5 lots per summary subdivision.
So it's even less.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me?
So it's less, it would be more, you need more lots. Because unless you're getting the variance that you're tapping into the El Prado Water Department, then you're going to have to have multiple.
Well, the summary subdivisions with 5 lots on them, and then we're catching all the water, we don't have to supply that much as if they were all conventional buildings not catching anything. So that's why we met with the county a bunch of times, so that we can identify that and do this. Anybody else?
There's a quick thought.
Yeah.
A friend of ours was saying, like, they're called spring boxes. Like, you get like from the highest point of the property, like you excavate a little bit, probably like a foot, half a foot, or whatever. Line it with some type of membrane or like plastic or something, and then so you don't have to have all that roof space. It's like catch water, and that water would flow through the plastic, whatever, rain, snow melt, and it would be filtered through the earth, and you have a cistern at the bottom. And even the shapes of the cisterns make a difference between more like a test tube style we can learn about. That it's just like when you do separation in chemistry, they don't use these petri dishes, they use them like better terms, cylinders, yeah. Beaker, whatever they're called, officially. And obviously, boy, there with the work of towers and all that. We have all this money to throw at things, could do instead of having to drill so many wells, but
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things out there where we can supply more and more water, pulling it out of the air also, even though it's so dry here. So a lot of the things we're really wanting to pursue. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. I appreciate all the feedback and the questions and everything. Keep looking at taoscommunity.org, and we'll probably be setting up some more public meetings. Thank you. Hey, right on. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And really well, just like it looks like.
All right.